Hi, artists of the world. I'm Natalia from Yes Art Marketing, and on this channel, I share practical ways to grow your art business, sell your work, and build a creative life that actually feels sustainable. So feel free to subscribe to my channel if you want more of that. I want to start with the thought that I hear quite often, and maybe you've thought this yourself at some point. Marketing doesn't really work for art because art doesn't solve a problem. And at first, it sounds completely reasonable because if you think about traditional marketing advice, it actually goes something like this: find a problem and then present your product as a solution. Yeah. And when you try to apply that to art, it feels forced and it doesn't really work because what exactly is the problem that your art is solving? Most artists end up with something like, well, buy this if your walls look empty, which is technically not wrong, but it doesn't feel very meaningful. And it definitely doesn't feel like something that would make someone stop and think, well, yeah, I need this. Yeah. So a lot of artists actually stop here, they get stuck and they decide that marketing doesn't work for art, it doesn't work for them, and it's just wrong. Marketing does work well for practical products. Marketing like that, yeah, when you identify a problem and sell people a solution, works for products and services, for necessities, etc. But yeah, it doesn't really apply to something as personal, as expressive, as elevated, sometimes luxury, something unnecessary like art. So I understand this reaction because I used to think very similarly. I have a master's in marketing degree, and this is what they taught us at the university, right? This is what marketing is. But then I became an artist and I started selling my own art, and I started noticing that, yeah, first of all, traditional marketing and art really aren't that compatible, but that doesn't mean that art can't be marketed. It doesn't mean that marketing does not work for art. There are so many things that people buy that don't solve a clear practical problem. They are not necessary, they're not logical purchases, and yet people want them and people spend crazy amount of money on them. And not just casually or accidentally, it's not impulse purchases. People actually actively choose these things, they invest in them, they care about them. Think about things like clothes, for example. You don't just buy something to cover your body. Clothes are not a necessity at this point. Yeah, you choose a specific style, a specific brand, a specific feeling. So between something that just solves a need to not feel cold, for example, or just to cover your body, you choose something that may be more expensive, maybe more expressive, a specific style that you want to carry a message about you. Or jewelry, for example, also very much not a necessity. Or even something as simple as a particular type of chocolate. There are cheaper options, more practical options, but people still go for something that aligns with their taste. They choose a brand that they identify themselves with. The same goes for travel, events, tattoos, home decor, cars, and bikes. None of these are solving urgent problems. They are choices, and those choices say something about the person making them. They reflect taste, values, identity, mood, sometimes even aspirations. We buy things because we want to be the people that have those things. And a really clear example of this kind of marketing is perfume advertising. If you've ever watched a perfume ad, you'll notice that they almost never explain the product in a practical way. They don't list features, they don't even list the notes of the fragrance. They don't try to convince you logically. Instead, they create a feeling, they create an image. There's a certain kind of visual, a certain kind of music, a certain atmosphere, a certain personality that you see on the screen. Sometimes it's romantic, sometimes it's mysterious, sometimes it's bold or confident. And the way they're really doing it is not selling the product itself. They're selling a version of you. They're inviting you into a mood, into an identity, into a feeling that you might want to experience or express. And this is much closer to how art marketing works, because art is not something people buy because they need it. They buy it because they connect with it, because it resonates with them in some way, because it reflects something they already feel or something they want to feel more of in their life. So instead of trying to force your art into this problem and solution framework, it's much more useful to shift the question. Instead of asking, what problem does my art solve? You can ask, what does my art say about a person who owns it? And that's a very different kind of question. It's not about function, it's about meaning, emotional connection. Like, really, if someone had your art in their home, what would that say about them? Who is that person that owns your art? Would it say that they appreciate calm, quiet spaces? Maybe it would say that they are drawn to bold, expressive visuals. Would it suggest maybe something playful or nostalgic or unconventional? There's no right or wrong answer here, but being aware of it gives you a lot of clarity about how to communicate your art. Because once you start seeing your work through this lens, your content and your marketing, they start making a lot more sense. So you're no longer trying to convince everyone. You're not trying to explain why your art is useful. Yeah, you're helping the right people recognize themselves in it, and that's much more natural process. Let me give you a small and very practical example of how a small shift can change things. Let's say you're posting a video of your work, and one approach would be simply to show the piece and say, here's my latest painting. That's what we all did at some point. And there's nothing wrong with that, yeah? But it doesn't really give the viewer much to connect to, just a visual, yeah? Another approach could be something like, I created this piece when I needed something calm and grounding after a busy week. So you're not just showing the work at this point, you're placing it in a context, you're giving it a feeling, and you're helping someone think, you know what, this is what I want to come home to after a busy day. This is the kind of atmosphere I want in my place. And that's the moment where connection starts to happen. Or another example, instead of just showing a finished piece, you might talk about what inspired it, what mood you were exploring, or even what kind of person you imagine being drawn to it. For example, you can say, for the most optimistic people. Yeah, very simple, very honest. It's enough. You don't really need to overcomplicate this, overcomplicate your work, or create some kind of elaborate narrative around everything that you do. It can be very simple, very subtle, because what you're really doing is just you being very honest about what your work is made of, the colors that you focus on, the details you highlight, the feeling you want to capture, the music you choose, the pace of your video. All of these things communicate something. They shape how your work is perceived. And all of that is marketing. It's just not intentionally marketing, but you're still sending signals. And the more aware you are of those signals, the easier it becomes to attract the kind of people who resonate with those signals. Okay. And this is where a lot of artists get stuck without realizing it, because they think, okay, I just need more exposure. I need to post more. I need to improve my technique. I need a stronger brand, whatever that means. And sometimes those things help, but often the missing piece is not this more effort. Yeah, it's more clarity about what your work communicates, who it speaks to. Because when that part is clear to you, the rest is really easy. Even all of your content becomes more natural, easy, intentional, intuitive, because you just know what to say because you're being honest about it. I hope that makes sense. And even the idea of selling here doesn't feel as uncomfortable because you're not pushing anyone into anything. You're not tricking people. You're just connecting with someone who already sees value in what you do. Also, if you want some help with this is exactly the kind of thing we work inside Yes Art Club. It's my marketing membership, marketing community for artists, a school plus a community where we can look at your specific work, your style, your direction, and we figure out together how to position it in a way that connects with people, how to market it in a way that is easy and that makes sense. You're not just posting and hoping that something works, but you understand what you're doing and why and who is supposed to connect with that. We also share monthly content ideas and prompts inside the group, including hook ideas, so you don't have to sit there and try to come up with everything from scratch every time you want to post something. So if you want to try out the membership and get some help with your marketing, find the link in the description to this video and use the code ONEFREE to activate a free membership. So it's free of charge for the entire month. And I will leave that in the description below. So for now, I want to leave you with a slightly different way of thinking about all of this, that your art doesn't need to justify itself by solving a problem. It doesn't need to be practical to be valuable. What matters is that it connects and it means something to a person, that it resonates, that it feels like something to someone. Because when that connection is there, people don't need to be convinced. They recognize themselves in your work. They buy who they are. And that's what makes them want the art in their life. And that's much more natural and honestly much more enjoyable way to build from. If this was helpful, feel free to subscribe and I will see you next Wednesday.